station, which the Times finds so fascinating, is of little consequence. Indeed, a satisfactory solution would require but an hour of my time, if that. No doubt, I murmured, hoping that Holmes might lay the matter to rest and return quietly to his newspapers. Holmes, however, was in no mood to suffer alone in silence. As for the rest of the Times, it is a desert, Watson, a desert without feature or termination, a vast aridity in which there is not one precious drop of hope for a thirsty detective such as myself. It is enough to make me wish that the late Professor Moriarty might return from the grave, or whatever dark portion of the hereafter he may be occupying, and embark upon some interesting mischief. At least Moriarty had the gift of imagination to go with his talent for crime. Really, Holmes, I do not think that summoning the spirits of the dead will be of much benefit to you, I said, putting down a medical text I'd been reading and going over to the window to look out upon the teeming life of Baker Street, which was bathed in bright sunshine. It is a beautiful day, and heaven knows we've enjoyed few of those this winter. Perhaps you should go out for a walk. The exercise would do you good. Holmes shook his head as he turned to the back page of his newspaper. It is mental, not physical exercise which I require, Watson. A walk would— He abruptly stopped, and I could see by his furrowed brow that something in the Times had caught his attention. What is it, Holmes? There was no answer for a moment. Then Holmes looked up and said, A rune stone, Watson. They have found a rune stone in Minnesota. How curious. I should note here that the study of runes, that distinctive alphabet used by the Norsemen of old, had become one of Holmes's latest passions. Some months earlier he had gone to visit his friend Lomax at the London Library and returned with a stack of dusty tomes, several of which were written in the Scandinavian languages. When I asked Holmes why he had suddenly turned to the study of ancient Norse writing, he replied that the runes are in many ways a mystery, Watson, and as I have nothing more productive to do at the moment, I propose to give them my full attention. I may even be able to clarify one or two points which have long baffled the leading scholars in the field. I learned later, however, that Holmes had in fact acquired his interest in runes during the sojourn in Scandinavia which followed his duel to the death with Professor Moriarty. Holmes seldom spoke of his activities during this period, but I gradually deduced from various small hints and passing remarks that he had spent several months in Sweden, where the study of runic writing, as might be expected, is quite advanced in the universities. Although I knew little of runes myself, I was naturally surprised to hear from Holmes that a stone with runic writing had been found in Minnesota, a place with which Holmes and I were already far too familiar. I suppose it is a hoax, not unlike that of the Cardiff Giant, I said as Holmes handed me the Times. I cannot imagine that the Vikings could ever have reached a place so distant from their homeland. Holmes nodded and said, There is also the inconvenient fact that Minnesota is at the very centre of the North American continent, and therefore 1,000 miles from salt water. You are right, Watson, it may well be a fraud, but if the Times is to be believed, it must be a very clever fraud, and therefore one that is not without certain points of interest. Here, take a look at the article. I dutifully perused the story, which read as follows. A large stone, chiselled with what is said to be medieval runic writing, has been discovered in a remote inland region of North America. The stone was found last November, clasped within the roots of a tree by a farmer in the western part of Minnesota, a state in the far northern portion of the American Midwest. Only recently, however, has word of the finding spread to scientific circles, where it has occasioned much excitement and discussion. According to a translation made by a professor at the University of Minnesota, the stone tells of a group of 30 Norse explorers who entered the region in the year 1362 but met with tragedy when 10 of their members were murdered by natives. In light of the recent history of archaeological forgeries, the supposed discovery will undoubtedly be greeted with skepticism by Swedish runologists, who are regarded as the world's leading experts on such matters. Nonetheless, it has been reported that several leading American scholars are already convinced as to the authenticity of the stone, which would of course be an artifact of immense significance if it is indeed genuine. I should like to see